Hey everybody, here's the second video. This video, as you see, how BRICS can work to improve Africa, and we're going to get straight into it. This is Uzo. That means it's only one direction, and that direction is up. This is going to be focusing this channel here on the African experience, black empowerment, and things from that nature. So we're going to have that type of bias and what things are there. The Western media is full of demonizing and criminalizing pretty much everybody. It works on the system of white supremacy. Sure, there's some people that aren't in that sphere, but that is where that media sphere comes from. If you are black, you are demonized. Sure, they demonize other people. We got the demonization of Russia. We got the demonization of China. But we got to get the overarching thing here. So let's talk about BRICS. Where's that image? Right here. So that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. All right. Oh, and by the way, the 2023 BRICS meeting here is in August 2023, hosted by South Africa. And so, look, what is that? So it originally started as an economic bloc because that happened after that 2007, 2008 financial crisis and everything. And they were more of a economic bloc and something about investment opportunities, right? But then, since about, 2009 or so, they said, you know what? I think we need to move on, because it got started in 2006, actually. So that was before the 2007, 2008, my mistake. So they said, hey, it's a geopolitical bloc, because you know what? As they started to meet, they're getting sanctions on them by the USA. Russia was like, hey, we need to start doing something back there in 2014, because that issue with Crimea. That's where it first started with Ukraine and Russia and everything. And really it started with NATO and the US not, following through on their agreements and treaties. But BRICS started as an economic bloc. Now it's moving toward a geopolitical bloc. For those that don't know, we're probably going to say this many times. Hey, they got a total combined land mass of almost 40 million square kilometers, a population of 3.2 billion people. And guess what? They got 41.5% of the world's population. And many of the developing nations are really left out of the conversation. And there's a reason for this. I want to bring your attention to this. You see, this article is by Africa and the World, so africaw.com, I believe. There you go. It says how the World Bank and the IMF destroy Africa. So this is going to be a shorter video, and then we're going to have other videos here, but we can't describe how something can be helped. In this case, that something, or the continent of Africa, can be assisted and improved, right? Until we talk about the background. So this is going to go into here, and I suggest you all look at this article. It says the World Bank and IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which unironically is in New York, right? In the U.S., were set up during the end of the Second World War to rebuild the economies in Europe. However, in order for the World Bank and the IMF to implement their policies, the World Bank and IMF, began to offer loans to poor countries, but only if the poor countries privatized their economies and allowed Western corporations free access to their raw materials and markets. Okay, it says that was a poverty trap, and many poor countries realized it when it was too late. I'm sure they realized it when it was happening. All right, I'm sure they realized it when it was happening. Okay, let's go here. They said the general perception is that the World Bank, the IMF, and World Trade Organization, WTO, help fight poverty and hunger in the developing world. And I run into so many different people that think they're doing something, and I just go up to them. I was like, are you sure you're not working for a 3-letter government organization like the, FBI, CIA, or something like that, with these little fake groups that they say, hey, we're going to help you, and then they just come there and they deliver weapons or something like that. From that book is called The Economic Hitman. Y'all should look it up. Now, are y'all sure y'all don't do that? And the people are like, what? And other people, they try to, start arguing or something like that. And then it makes me kind of iffy, right? Like, why are you arguing with that? The other one are like, wow, I didn't know that. And others start to try to argue and call names. They don't argue with what I said. They just start calling names. And then that's when I start to say, I don't know. Now, because I always ask them, if you're giving aid to somewhere, this organization has been around for 20, 50, however many years. Has it improved the location? And then the people are like, huh? The well-meaning people, they start to have a conversation and say, well, this, and this. And I say, well, just like in anything with business, right? If I go in and you and your household, you got to pay bills at the end of the month, right? So if you have an organization that is supposed to be, quote, alleviating hunger and poverty, did it actually alleviate it? Or are you doing donations? So here's a story right here. It says, take a country for like Ghana, for example. Ghana is blessed with an abundance of natural resources. Okay, the IMF and World Bank are very interested in countries like Ghana where they can easily control the natural resources and markets. Great. Okay, there used to be some prosperous rice farming communities. And tell me if this sounds familiar to your African country or your developing nation, if you're not in Africa, because I'm sure we'll have some people outside of Africa, maybe in India, that will relate to this, right? There used to be some prosperous rice farming communities in the northern parts of Ghana. In fact, the government of Ghana used to give those rice producing farmers some farming subsidies. That means they take the money from the taxpayers, or, most countries have to do that. USA and maybe a few others, they can just print the currency and then everybody else kind of depends on it. But most countries, you got to pay things based on taxes that you have from people. So they're going to give it to their farmers. That's very important. I don't think anybody would say, you know what, we shouldn't take some of the money they tax to give the farmers. I think most people will say that so that it can make it easier to feed everybody. Everybody wants to get water and food, right? And shelter. Two, so let's go here. It said, in fact, the government of Ghana used to give those rice producing farmers some farming subsidies to enable them produce I think they meant to produce rice on a larger scale to help feed the nation. However, the WTO, the World Bank, and IMF stood in and told the Ghanaian government that they, the World Bank, IMF, etc., would not give Ghana any more loans unless the Ghanaian government cut the farming subsidies. And the main reason behind it was that Ghana had to import rice from, quote, partner Western countries like the United States, a major partner of the World Bank and IMF. Now, don't y'all notice that most of the nations that you're importing, because Africa is a largely import nation as far as food. Isn't that kind of ironic that you have all of these nations in the middle of Africa? They got all the arable land. They got all of this arable land. Let me bring this up for you guys here, because this is going to be a business opportunity I want to point to you all. All right. Now, you see this here. This is the United Nations right here. Now, it says FAO warns 90% of the Earth's topsoil at risk by 2050. Now, they'll interchange topsoil and arable land here and there because it makes it kind of hard to search for it. And that's what I just had to do again. I had this saved somewhere and then I lost it because there are articles, and don't just take my word for it. They're talking about the United States and in Europe will run out of farmable land, topsoil, arable land. Let's just use that interchangeably, not exactly the same, by 2050. Or they'll say 50 years from now. Then you'll see the articles written like 10 or whatever years ago. Now, they're saying this was written in July. This was published July 27th, 2022 now. It said a full 90% of the Earth's precious topsoil is likely to be at risk by 2050, according to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. Now, they're mainly talking about Europe. Now, you see how this is? Isn't this kind of crazy how Africa, even look at how Africa is so tiny here. Even South America looks big. They're making it very small. They just minimize how Africa looks all the freaking time. Greenland or Iceland, whatever this is, making it very, very big. They said 95% of our food comes from soils. Yes. Yes. They are very concerned. Did you know that the World Economic Forum, these little globalists there, they want people to start eating insects? They're like, hey, eat insects. Not even kidding with you. They want insect burgers. Now, again, I said I'm going to bring a business opportunity here. Now, if you are in, see, this is the World Economic Forum website now. Now, here's what they said on their own website. It doesn't have a date here that I saw. So, I guess it's Davos 2016 or something like that. It's very outdated. So, it says two truths about Africa's agriculture. Oh, yeah, it is 2016. There are two truths today about African agriculture. Significant progress has been made, and there is potential for much more. Now, all these people do, they just kind of talk and talk and talk. Now, they implement things. They were not expecting a challenge from nations like in the BRICS system and connections like that. They did not expect China to start really, really coming in and challenging some of this because they're telling us all of this weirdo stuff. And they're implementing it. Now, it says the progress has been made. The progress has been quite impressive. Agricultural production is up 160% over the past 30 years. I wonder if Bill and Melinda Gates kind of own that and Monsanto and all of those places. Far above the global average of 100%. 18 sub-Saharan African countries have reached the Millennium Development Goals first target of having the proportion of people who are hungry. Okay, man, this is taking a long time here. It said Africa remains the net importer. This is the point I wanted to point out. Net importer of food. Although it has 60... Okay, wait a minute. Africa remains a net importer of food. Although it has 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. Look up the definition of arable, right? As its population has doubled overall and tripled in urban areas in the past 30 years. Agricultural production and food security have struggled to keep pace. I just wonder who, just scratching my head and I wonder why that hasn't really kept up pace. We're going to go back to that article in a second, but let's stick to here for a second. Africa is the only continent where the absolute number of unnourished people has increased over the past 30 years. I just can't figure out why that has happened. Africa will have a population of 2 billion by 2050. Now, I'm just wondering here, how the heck does the country with the most to give and offer, that has all of the sunlight? I mean, Southern Africa may go through temperate zones, but you got places like Uganda. They got 2 rainy seasons. They're on the equator, right? Then you got Kenya, which is a little bit off the equator to the point where they have to adjust their solar panels if they do install them. I learned a lot with that. But they have a good one. Ethiopia, they depend, their GDP is dependent on agriculture. So when all of this conflict that was happening, that was revealed to be really instigated by the United States, and Ethiopia is pretty friendly to the U.S. Like very friendly to the point where the president, he was talking negatively about black Americans. Yeah, very friendly to the U.S. Now, even over there, they got the U.S. that was instigating an internal conflict over there and instigating that civil war and everything. And yet, we can't figure out how to feed people in Africa? Tell me more. It says Africa will have a population of 2 billion by 2050, and agriculture will be central to feeding all of these people, all of those people. Agricultural transformation must build social cohesion, all these fancy words, create beneficial continental trade, provide a platform for global exports. I wonder, is there going to be more exporting than Yeah, let's just go on. And most importantly, help create millions of jobs while pulling subsistence farmers out of poverty. Now, right now, they say this was in 2016. Small farmers contribute up to 80% of sub-Saharan Africa's food supply. Always sub-Saharan. Why don't you include North Africa in this? No clue. Now, according to UN's FAO, and Africa has an estimated 33 million smallholder farms. Okay, great. 33 million smallholder farms that somehow cannot figure out how to feed the rest of the people? Increasing their capabilities would increase Africa's output and, more importantly, help solve Africa's poverty and malnutrition. No. Let's get this into order. When you listen to these folks, them folks speak, increasing their capabilities would increase Africa's output, Okay? That's what they're focused on. They don't care. They don't give a flying F about poverty and malnutrition. When was the first African nation, and happy Independence Day to Ghana? That was on March 6th. That was the first African nation that got its independence from these colonial devils. That was on March 6, 1957. They had 65 years. Now, I know this was in 2016, but you got 65 years from then to have, quote, solved an issue that you all are keeping there. I just wonder what's going through these sick demons' head when they're just out here torturing people. Now, let's go back to the article because, I'm making some accusations, right? Oh, and before we get to that, this is this article right here. And let's go. Refuse all these cookies. Leave my cookies alone. This is on the French website, as you can see. République Francois Liberté. No clue. RFLEF. I cannot. INRAE. Okay, great. Very nice. It's the République Francois, the French Republic's library of something. I'm trying to translate it because I know Spanish and I'm trying to use that as here. But anyway, the role of European agriculture in world trade by 2050. Very, very nice. This was written on February 14th, 2020. Now, the European Agriculture in 2050 study conducted by INRAE at the request of Florigri Association follows the foresight. Now, this is what they're trying to do. They want to make sure that Europe still has a role in export. The logical people that, should have an abundance so big that you just can't stop them. Like, it should just be abundantly clear. You would think, and the topsoil, 90% is going to be gone. So what are they going to do? Probably something like this. You own the farms in Africa. Then we're going to import, then export it back to you. Kind of like how the United States does its thing. It exports its oil to Canada and then imports it back at a higher price. Or it does that with different nations. It was trying to do that with China. I think they got this little thing with Hunter Biden and all that stuff allegedly taking place. They haven't finished it by the time of this recording. But that's what they were saying. Hey, we're going to export our oil to China, then import it at a higher price. And then, like, if you think Nigeria is kind of jacked up with not even manufacturing its own oil and whatnot, the USA ain't too far off. Now, let's go back to the article finally. Now, after, these globalists got handed to them with my reading of their of what they had on their website, let's go back here. They said there used to be some prosperous rice farm communities in northern parts of Ghana. In fact, the government used to give those rice producing farmers some farming subsidies to enable them to produce rice on a larger scale to help feed the nation. However, the World Trade Organization and all of them, let's skip, would not give Ghana any more loans unless the Ghanaian government cut the farming subsidies. And the main reason behind that was Ghana had to import rice from, quote, partner Western countries, such as the United States. All right. Now, here's the thing. Now Ghana imports most of its rice from abroad at huge prices every year. This is what they say here. Now I know that the coconut industry was destroyed. You had many other oil industries that were destroyed. Now I have my own feelings about the health of all of these because I'm like, look, max health, max health, max health. No oil is healthy. There are more oils healthier than others, but no oil is healthy. But if people are going to eat them and everything, and look, it's kind of crazy how that is. Everybody even knows. You can even look this up. Like Coca-Cola, they didn't want to create a big industry in South America, so they banned cocaine from being used in Coca-Cola. That's where it gets its name, cocaine cola. So they took it out of that, and they did not want South America. They even had it stated with government documents or something like that. They said they did not want the South America to have an industry real strong. So they cut out that. They banned that. So it would be no surprise that they also demonized tropical oils to destroy, oils that come from tropical countries, like in countries like Ghana. Now, so at the end of the day, Ghana owes the World Bank and IMF huge amounts of money. However, the money did not remain in Ghanaian economy because Ghana had to use the loan to import food from abroad. So let's get this straight. They said, hey, look, this is how it's going to go. Oh, actually, let's keep reading this. Meanwhile, the rice producing communities in Ghana could have helped produce enough rice to feed the nation and even exported some abroad to make a profit, right? Because it makes logical sense. You got the actual heat there. You got temperatures that are conducive most of the year round versus in very cold places. Now, wheat is probably better in cooler climates, to be fair. That's what I learned. But, things like this, rice, hey. Now, the northern communities in Ghana remain the poorest in the country with no better jobs and no opportunities at all in most parts. Very ironic because most places in countries I've noticed, the northern areas are richer and the southern areas are broker. But I've noticed in countries like in Ghana and Nigeria, the poorest people are up north. Kind of weird. But anyway, young boys and girls, some as young as 9, are migrating to the southern parts of the country to major cities and towns such as Kumasi and Accra. A very dangerous journey for kids, all in search for jobs so they could take care of their poor dying families back home. Most of these kids, locally known as Kayayo, never return home. What? Dang. Some die along the way and some return worse than before. And all thanks to the IMF, World Bank, and World Trade Organization. Now, this is them saying this. I'm just reading what they're putting. Although the money was returned to them, we still owe them. Now, I'm assuming when they say we, are they talking from African perspective or are they talking from Ghanaian? Because I don't know who the author is here. That is why most developing countries owe the World Bank and the IMF a lot in loans. So they already paid off the loan, but it's because the interest rate. Did you know that the interest rate is like near nothing? This is what happens to black people in the U.S., all over the place. So these black nations, they get these high freaking interest rates. Let's say 30% or so. And I think some of them actually are. It's just like, yeah. And then places like the United States, other places, but in Europe, they get like next to 0, 1% or something like that. It's like, huh? Wait a minute. What? It's like, you giving me this huge interest rate and then they get like nothing. But okay, let's read on. What does this actually mean? Sometimes you hear, quote, debt cancellations, end quote, and you may think they forgive poor countries their debt. But that is not how it works in reality. The World Bank and IMF never forgive, and because of the huge debts developing countries owe, the World Bank, IMF, the WTO, and United States, a major partner of the World Bank, etc., control almost all the affairs of these poor countries. In other words, if you don't obey what the World Bank and them say, then you must pay back the debt, and because you cannot pay back the debt, you must obey what they tell you. Interesting. Any leader who doesn't obey them is often labeled a quote terrorist and must be assassinated in most cases. For example, when there was an oil discovery in a developing country that owes them the money, and the leader of that developing country is not ready to cooperate, so Western corporations can easily take over the oil exploration, the World Banking Company quickly get rid of such a leader, sometimes through quote war, just like what happened in Iraq. Interesting. So that means people are very aware of this. The leaders, so-called leaders, right, will be aware of this. But here's the kicker. The World Banking Company elect their own, quote, obedient, end quote, leaders to rule those poor countries so that they can easily control the country's economy and market. Isn't that freaking crazy, right? So they're giving out these loans. The requirement of the loan is to say, hey, I know you got an agricultural market and you're in a tropical place, so that's the one that would be most advantageous to you, as well as minerals and anything else you have there, because we don't got it on our land. Our land is kind of barren. So in order to give us an advantage, we're giving you a loan. We're going to give it at a higher interest rate. You got a whole bunch of weird things that go on, if you know what I mean, and take the money. So we can come in, because at least your family and you are going to get taken care of. And if you don't listen, well, we might have to do some other means, disruptions in your country and all of that stuff, but take the money or else. That's basically what this article is insinuating here and directly saying. Take the money or else. If you don't take the money or you don't want to comply, we're just going to have to replace you. Kind of similar to what, I guess, I don't know, didn't they do a coup in Ukraine? And that's what this current issue is. The U.S. did a coup in Ukraine. This is what former military people are saying about the United States right now. So I'm not even saying it out of nowhere. They said U.S. did a coup in Ukraine. That'll be like if Russia said, hey, we're going to replace the Mexican or Canadian president, and then they're going to work against the United States. That's kind of basically what the U.S. did with that whole situation. So of course Russia's gonna, strike back and everything. So they're looking at it like that. So if they're doing it to a nation like that, what do you think they're doing in Ghana, Nigeria, and all over the place? What do you guys think about this? Now here's where BRICS comes in. Now let's go back to BRICS. Let's go back to BRICS real quick. This was a very, very long one. I thought it was going to be short. Now, the BRICS nations are out here now. Now, South Africa is a equal member because they all put up 10 billion US dollar equivalent in the new development bank they have, which is to kind of compete against the IMF, World Bank, and everything like that. So that means they all have a 20% share. I don't know what they have behind the scenes, but that's what they give, public. It looks like public facing information. So they all have an equal share because China wanted to give most and then have all the, political power and stuff. And they said, no, let's come up as equals and start this. And that seems to be good. So that means South Africa, as they're giving out loans, different types of loans for infrastructure to build bridges and everything. The IMF and all of them, they always would give aid, right? And this is going to be on the next video. So the business opportunity here is agriculture. I know it was a very, very long video and I went around some different areas, but we got to paint the picture so that on my future videos, then we don't have to go into those details. I'll remind and do quick bits again, but on this one, this was that long one. Now, you start to realize that BRICS has the ability to be giving out loans other than just China. So that means these loans can also, when they're getting repaid, now help the South African government. And many people feel certain ways about the government down there. And, each individual country has its own issues and everything like that. The anti-blackness in many of the countries worldwide, that's still very rampant. But as far as where it comes to Africa, for the development projects that will be occurring on the continent and the new members that may be coming in like Nigeria and Egypt and the like, well, What this paints is that, okay, while these others like IMF, World Bank, and everything like that were giving out loans as a predatory thing, since they're trying to get more power and sway and political, prowess and everything, they're gonna come in saying, hey, they gave you a loan and they just kind of gave you the money. We're giving you a loan and we're going to start building things directly. You got a high speed rail that you need to be built. Let's go ahead and do it. That creates jobs, that creates the infrastructure. Now the agriculture, because if you want to export, hey, we're going to need this. We got a huge growing population. South Africa's going to have a population that's growing. Russia's going to have one that's growing. India, Brazil, especially. China's already got a huge one, right? So why not build up that infrastructure that makes it easier to then deliver with each other once you all are taken care of? Now the innovation starts. Humans can now go to different locations. That means different planets. We are going to be talking about space flight on this channel. We're going to be talking about the engineering feats and mics on this channel. So you guys come here, subscribe if you want to come to new thinking, better thinking, forward thinking, because there's only one direction. There's only one Uzo. We are going to go, and we're going to go somewhere where people have not had a chance to think because of all this disruption from these powers that be. These powers that be that come in and put in puppet leaders. So and they try to market it, and it's a brain drain from your country to the other ones. How come the super collider is in Europe's hands and there's not one that's also in the hands of a super collider in Africa? That means no matter what, that power is there. But as the United States starts to cut off China, they say, hey, we're going to do it on our own, but we're open to everybody else to collaborate with us. Because at the end of the day, we need everybody else too. So this opens the door for space flight programs out of Ghana and Nigeria, as we can see them develop in there. Out of the nuclear programs that are there, a new Hadron Collider, and maybe, just maybe, one that is bigger and better than the one in Europe. Because the way this is looking, they've been so focused on just sucking out all of the brains and resources out from these countries. We're sticking to Africa now. You know, this happens in South America too, and different parts of Asia. But they've been so busy sucking out the resources, trying to keep people beat down and all of that, that they haven't really been focusing on innovation. We could be much further right now if we were doing it. So here's business opportunities. Agriculture is going to be huge. Whatever age you are right now, remember 2050 is coming no matter if you want it to come or not. We can get up on these 5G farms where you can start having that technology there, because we got some things that we want to do too with myself, where we're going to have some mini operations that we have going on, because there's too much freaking money here. And under some reports, Africa might even have a $29 trillion economy by 2050. But that's if things go perfect and everything like that. Probably, I don't know. But things happen slowly and then all at once. I'll bring up that one on another video in the future. Remind me in the comment section below if you want to see that one where I said the $29 trillion economy on the continent of Africa. Right now, you're like, wait a minute, it's barely 2.5. Where you getting, it's barely a few trillion right now. Where you getting 29 trillion? How do you go from that and pop up by 10x? How does that happen? How did China explode? All right, I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.